Well, again, here it is, March the 1st, first day of March, 19 days from the spring equinox, which we'll be enjoying at Jenny's house this year. But I want to speak a little bit about about spring. Driving in this morning, it just amazed me how almost overnight things are beginning to green up and flowers are beginning to bloom and the birds are beginning to sing. And it's, for me, it's just like a moment. But when we think about spring and its connection to the medicine wheel, the East is a reminder of where we have been and where we are going as we move forward on our journey on the medicine wheel way from simple point of new beginnings. Marked typically by the spring equinox, we enter the circle of the medicine wheel and we begin the seven sacred teachings journey in and through the eastern gate, a place, a time of season, of birth, rebirth, newness, beginnings and beginning again. It's a place when and where in a moment in time we hear that still small voice of Creator affirming, behold, look, see, I am making all things new. The key, if you will, that unlocks that gate of new beginnings is humility, the first of the seven sacred teachings. Now, mind you, if we were to ask 10 different people to explain their perception and understanding and meaning of humility, I have no doubt you'd get 10 different answers, 10 different responses in return, because humility is hard to generalize when you think about it. It is for one man, one thing, while something quite different, yet equally meaningful, profound, and medicinal to another. But on my journey, as I began to prepare for the spring equinox in this season of awakening, that slow, laborious transition from the harshness of winter to the rebirth and the hope of spring. The tender infancy of all of nature, awakening from a cycle of conception and creation. Alive with the warm breath and vibrant color of that which is being freshly born. I've mentioned this before. For many indigenous cultures, in religious rites and rituals, spring is noted as the beginning of the year, the new year, not in winter, as per the traditional calendar rather. To the newborn infant, think about this, there's no reality, no existence beyond the self, ego, and its need fulfillment relationship to the world around it. At this stage of development, anyone or anything beyond the self exists to serve the ego. We cannot be too harsh in our judgments or prejudice of one's evolution of maturing, one's journey traversing the medicine wheel of life's beginnings endings and transitions. This is where we in all things begin. In and with the self, the ego, and humility is the first infant step of our development, among many to follow, of awakening, maturing, and eventual transcendence. I'll share with you a very personal story that taught me a profound lesson in humility. A little over 4 years ago, I was home only 2 weeks post 2 spine surgeries, the second one coming only 5 days after the first. And from there, I was transported to inpatient rehabilitation, 3 weeks total. The experience, while it was somewhat painful and physically challenging, I found it to be healing and efficacious on many levels, inclusively mind, body, and spirit. I learned much from those 3 weeks as I had an abundance of teaching, of teachers, and teachable moments. I hope you can find the humor in this story. But one of those moments came on the morning of my first week in rehab. A nurse that I had not yet met walked into my room to help me get ready for my morning therapy session. Her name was Anita. Anita was an unusually large woman whose presence just commanded the room. I almost immediately felt and sensed an old soul familiarity and comfort flow from her heart and her spirit. She helped me out of bed into the vanity, fresh from sleep and an extraordinarily bad hair day. She took the brush from the counter and began brushing my long hair. We got to do something with this mess. I like my men well groomed. Admittedly, I looked horrible. Though not by choice, it was now over 2 weeks since I'd had a shower. One was well overdue. Well, it's been at least a week since I've had a bath, I replied. We're going to fix that before day's end, Anita assured me. Shortly after I finished my evening meal, a knock came to my door. It was Anita. True to her word, she came in carrying bundles of blankets and towels. You know, hospital showers are a bit challenging so far as logistics are concerned. She brought in washcloths, soap, and shampoo, and God bless her, even a razor. She truly does like her men well groomed. And I was not disagreeing with that, not tonight. Funny, I remember thinking how when seemingly the little things of life, such as a shower, whenever you want it or desire it, is often taken for granted. And it is only after it is no more do we realize what a treasure it really and truly was. So now here I sat in a wheelchair, confronting what it took me nearly 71 years to come to that place of total helplessness, total, comprehensive, and complete helplessness, and an inability to so much as to bathe myself. Humility. How do we go about this? I asked, looking up at her. Well, it'd be best if you took off those nasty clothes. And I realized in that moment, and most likely for the first time ever, since my baby voice cried out from the displeasure of a soiled diaper or an empty stomach, what it was to be utterly and totally dependent upon another human being for even so much as the warmth and grace of an overdue shower. And the only thing standing in my way would have been my pride, my ego, humility. I felt no shame, however, as I began to discreetly undress. While this might be my first, it was by no means Anita's, and nor would it be her last. In that moment, I had two available responses, only two, no more. Stubbornness or surrender. Pick one. You can't have them both. Humility. Sitting under the warmth of that sacred stream of water, having surrendered my weakness and my helplessness to the strength of another human being, a human being who was bathing me now. And only now did I realize that I was being served. There was a certain beauty of, and in that moment, that exchange of divine energy between two people. Sure, being a nurse was Anita's chosen profession, and helping patients bathe is just part of the job. But for me, this transcended that, even and especially in the presence of silence. No words were spoken, none were necessary. Humility. Many times as I've thought about the how to teach on humility and the challenge that subjectively presents itself, I now had a profound vision as to what it must and ultimately resemble. Surrender, sacrifice, and service, in that order. Without all three, all that remains is nothing more than a profession and not one's passion. Now I understood what it meant and how it felt to sit, stand, and walk in humility. A sacred bow of honor to a power and presence much bigger, much greater, much larger than myself, my ego, and upon which I was somewhat dependent. Unlike the infant child whose cry, prompted by the pangs of selfish desire, to move from there to be truly connected to the divine energy of the collective consciousness of humanity through virtues of surrender, sacrifice, and service. That infant child will one day and ultimately awaken to the realization and acknowledgement of their greatness, be it in paradigm or politics, doctrine or dogma, God or glory. If not, that child will have a difficult time navigating the future of a journey that begins with humility and ends with love. a journey most confess and profess as a strong desire to experience and express for themselves and those that we love. Humility now is not, nor is it suggested that we have to become like a doormat, that which everyone walks over to get over there or over here. Humility is not humiliation, nor does it promote or encourage your allowance of being humiliated. It is not a weakness. It's not a sign of weakness. Humility, among its many virtues, is, however, an understanding and agreement of what we're talking about here. And it boils down to the concept that we receive from our Lakota relatives. And as we speak often, oh, Mitakiwayayasan, we are all related in this web of things that we call life. And there's more to life and living than what we perceive and proclaim to be the address of self. That very small parcel of land that we call me. It is assuming a posture in our way which both shows and seeks the highest and the very best good for and among all people, all nations, our planet, humility. On a more intimate level, humility begins the moment that infant child realizes there's more to this universe than the self. And not only is there a connectedness of and among all things, there's a similarly corporate interdependence where we in all things share in the process and paradigm of both human and social evolution. We learn to cooperate as we participate and participate as we cooperate. In the grand scheme of things, this acknowledgement, agreement about which I speak, this sacred vow of honor and humility, is ultimately and eventually a production of the surrender to the divine, or at best, the divine order, governing the laws of the universe and all that dwells within. Some call this presence God. Native people in our own languages have our own words of speaking of this divine presence. The Creeks know him as a Ofunga, that we find again with our Plains relatives, Wakantaka, the great mystery, that which cannot nor will ever be fully understood on this side of the spirit world. Now, it is my conviction that we all come here with a purpose. And as a result of agreements and arrangements we negotiated with Creator long before we just randomly showed up on this earth walk. When the life that we live and the prayer that we walk is in alignment and in integrity with that purpose, those agreements, there's a more wholesome and recognizable balance, centeredness in, around, and about our presence and our personal presentation. Like the spokes on the wheel, when they are all in alignment with each other, there is balance in the rotation. If one or more of those spokes is out of alignment, out of integrity with their intended purpose, the rotation will be rough and the journey wearisome and exhausting. One is no greater, no lesser than the other. None is more important than another. All are essential. For when one is out of balance, all are out of balance. When one is out of alignment, all is out of alignment. We're seeing that taking place today and over this weekend in the Middle East. Often along the way of our journey, we find ourselves in a similar predicament, out of balance, out of focus, out of integrity with ourselves, with our agreement with Creator, and the road becomes a bit bumpy. It is in those moments, and in order to bring ourselves back into that place that Crazy Horse recognized as the center within you and within me, we must inventory and evaluate the spokes, so to speak, of our own lives to determine which and what needs adjustment. The medicine wheel provides the directions to direct that inventory, and the 7 sacred teachings, the instructions. Our spiritual journey then begins now, in the season of the East, where all things begin, and the teaching, the life lessons, begins with humility. There is more to humility than just a sacred surrender. It is a curated and corporate collective cooperation with and among all people, the earth, all things, which identifies and seeks the highest and best good thereof. Without such, the result is human anarchy and corporate chaos. My hospital shower experience with Anita, for example, in order for the beauty of it to be fully realized and appreciated, required not only my surrender to the process, but my willingness and my availability to cooperate. Had I not been courageous enough to set my ego aside and nod a sacred surrender and resistance in the process, Anita would have awakened me the next morning just as dirty and disheveled and miserable as I was the night before. It is only fitting then that our journey toward the ultimate realization and manifestation of love begins in a season of new beginnings. East, spring, humility. And humility is the first of all its steps, the first breath of all breaths, the first layer of self among many, the gate that reveals all that will follow, and until and unless we have taken a sacred knee as we enter our journey, will be at best challenging and frustrating at every twist and turn. The extent of our arriving is closely connected and correlated with our beginning. If our beginning is weak, incomplete, ineffective, so shall our walk and ultimate arriving journey may be. Each direction, each teaching presents the spiritual pilgrim seasons of self-evaluation, introspection, self-checking, which, if followed properly, will provide the greatest chance and hope for overall balance at an individual level and on a corporate and collective level. Each direction, the teaching again, if navigated properly, will be opportunity to choose laying down and setting aside the ego and moving from an infant childlike selfishness to sacred surrender, and ultimately a return and restoration of love as it was created and intended to be in the beginning. Even Creator itself reminds us that if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, seek my face, then I will hear their prayer from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land. It really comes down to our openness to cultivate our soul in a good way, rather than involve ourselves in a love affair with our ego. Ego seeks to serve itself. Soul seeks to serve others. Ego seeks outward recognition. Soul seeks inner authenticity. Ego sees life as a competition. Soul sees life as a gift. Ego seeks to preserve self. Soul seeks to preserve others. Ego looks outward. While soul looks inward. Ego feels lack. Soul feels abundance. Ego is mortal. The soul is eternal. Ego seeks wisdom. Soul is wisdom. Ego enjoys the prize. Soul enjoys the journey. Ego is to cause pain. Soul is the cause of healing. Ego rejects God. Soul embraces God. Ego is me. Soul is we. Humility. And so may we receive this message in a good way today. I hope. We come now to our time at the altar. All of us are relatively familiar with the protocol. Our surrender, or a letting go bowl on the coal of humility. Whatever no longer serves us or grows us or nurtures our soul or influences our happiness in a good way. Today's a good day to let all of that go. So let us come to the altar now. And today, may we focus our thoughts and our prayers on finding that place of sacred surrender. A place that we know is humility. Come now and let's make a good prayer together.